guys do? Welcome back. Hello, it's me. You thought I disappeared, but I am back, and it is like mid-February, and good God, we have a lot to talk about. Non più tra I farfalloni amoroso, notte giorno. So let's just back up and explain where on earth I've been. If you're a long time or short-ish long time follower of mine, that you might have noticed that I've been gone for a little bit longer than I said I would. I signed off with a video just before Christmas last year, and I thought I would take a couple weeks off before I got back into filming. That evidently did not happen. What did happen is I got sick for like a full month. Thankfully not COVID, but I was having a real fun battle with just lots of annoying minor illnesses, and I couldn't talk. So on and off from like Christmas up until late January, I was just unable to film for you guys. I didn't have the power to speak to you. And then I went on holiday, so I've been away for a couple weeks in New Zealand seeing some friends, and now we are back, and I am happy and healthy and so excited to be able to talk about books with you again. I'm so excited. I also worked out that I haven't done a book haul since August, and that was definitely a mistake. I had the thought process around Christmas time that maybe I should do a haul before Christmas, but I didn't have a crazy number of books to show you, but then things have just sort of got out of control, and so I'm actually not going to be doing every book I've received since my last book haul, because we would be here for hours. It's over 100 books, because you know me, I have a magical ability for collecting books, so I'm actually just going to be doing a couple of highlights for the books that you would have missed in those last few months, and then everything that I've got since the beginning of the year so far. So this haul is a collection of some highlights from Christmas, some special, I'm going to show you all the special editions I've got, don't worry, they will all be on this list. And also things I bought whilst I was in New Zealand. There's I think only like 1 or 2 review copies to show you. I've still got a few that are sneakily trickling in despite me not asking for them, but I'll show you those, might as well. And just other books that I've been really excited about. I thought I'd talk through all of my audiobooks because there's not too many of those. And yeah, I think we'll just go from there. So obviously there have been a few reasons why I've had large book hauls. One being it's been a number of months. 2 being I've had a lot of subscriptions on the go, and I've now received all the ones that I've wanted to try out for a while, and I've pared them all back. So for your fun information, I am now only subscribing to Fairyloot, and I am trialing a new one called The Locked Library, and I will be showing you the first book. I have a 3-month subscription to them at the moment. I don't know if I'll keep going just because it's so expensive to have really more than one, but Fairyloot's the one I'm going to be going with, so I've stopped Novelist and I've stopped Illumicrate to bring it back to reality. But I'm really glad that I got to trial those things, so we'll talk about some of the final few books. But obviously when those were all going, that's a lot of books coming in. There were loads and loads of delays over December as well, which meant that it would still be overwhelming to you no matter when I filmed this pretty much, but for me it was very overwhelming in January, and particularly in the couple of weeks whilst I was overseas, a lot of the post started moving again, because not only was there just sort of weird stock delays happening everywhere, the Royal Mail went down for like 2 weeks, really long time, and then it takes forever to get to Western Australia anyway. So I suddenly had like a massive backup of all these like pre-orders, particularly from Waterstones, that just came in together. So let's get into it, because we've still got, I think, at least somewhere between 30 and 40 books to talk about. And I thought I would start with digital editions as always. So I've made a really handy little list for myself just so that I don't forget things. So I will run through that and we'll see what digital editions I've got. And yeah, I'm just really excited to be back here and talking to you guys again. It's been such a long time since I've been able to do this, and I'm looking forward to hopefully getting into a regular rhythm again, as long as routines allow. Can't wait to do like a 2022 goals for you guys as well, because I'm very aware that we haven't really discussed that in terms of, yeah, what I want to read and what I want to buy, but that's not today's video, so stay tuned, kids. So the first digital book I want to talk about is the audiobook of Jurassic Park. Now, I think I bought this with my subscription. I don't think it was a free book, and I don't remember why. I can't remember the lead up to it, but I've always been interested in reading Jurassic Park. I like the original film, and then I've become increasingly obsessed with both dinosaurs and the new ones with Chris Pratt. I always get confused between Chris Pratt and Chris Pine, and I believe it's Pratt. And so I've really been enjoying the Jurassic World movies, and it got me just really interested to read the books themselves. So I decided to listen to the audiobook, and I'm obsessed. I love Jurassic Park. It was so good. So yeah, I've read that, and I will be talking about the sequel once we get onto some physical books. I had never read anything by Michael Crichton before. The book was written in the oh god, I can't remember, somewhere between the 80s and the noughties, and I think it was the 80s, and I was just really impressed by how relevant a lot of the science is still today. It all made sense, lots of things could be taken out of context and applied to like everyday current world things in the 2020s, which I thought was just really fascinating and made it really good reading. So if you like dinosaurs, can't recommend enough. I'm very interested in reading more of Michael Crichton's backlist because of that. He's written a lot of sci-fi. I'm certainly elevating him to the status of someone like Andy Weir in terms of the amount of science that presents as real. I have never bothered to verify these things, but science that seems to check out, that kind of helps bolster the believability of the like aliens or dinosaurs that both of those writers write about. Like they combine it so well. So like 5 stars for Jurassic Park, and the audiobook is really good as well, so I highly recommend that. The next audiobook that I got was book 9 in Outlander, so Go Tell the Bees That I Am Gone. I have since seen that this is all of the Outlanders seem to have rotated onto the Audible library, which is free, so I'm trying not to be too salty about that, but that's okay because they are books that I will probably re-listen to at some point, as daunting as that seems. But I figured it was time to dive in to the pool of Outlander and get the next one lined up. I'm hoping to read it reasonably soon. I will just hint at the fact that finishing series might be quite a serious goal of mine, so reading book 9 would get me up to date / finished. Again, we'll talk about those parameters in the future. So I'm very motivated to read that, but it's obviously a long book. These books are somewhere between 50 to 60 hours long. Most audiobooks are around 10 hours, so you do the maths, you freak out. They're long, they're a big commitment, and I've not long finished reading War and Peace, so you know I'm a little bit like on the long audiobook front. But yeah, I've got that one lined up and I'm ready to go, so I am a keen bean to read some more Outlander. Speaking of authors that I really love, I got one of Kate Quinn's backlist books, which is called The Huntress. This is historical fiction. Kate Quinn wrote The Rose Code and The Diamond Eye. Those are the books of hers that I have read, and I have a physical copy of The Alice Network, I think it's called. She's an historical fiction writer that I really revere and recommend to everyone, and she just seems to tick a lot of boxes on quite a broad spectrum of readers. Everyone in my family, from people who like crime to like chick lit to me liking fantasy, she just seems to be a very, like an author who appeases everyone in the way that her historical fiction is written, which is quite unusual. So I'm really looking forward to that. I did both The Rose Code and The Diamond Eye as audios, so it's the same narrator for The Huntress, and she is a brilliant narrator. Can I remember her name? No, I cannot. But if you look it up on Audible, hopefully you have the same narrator at whichever territory book you're reading. I can't recommend that enough. So good. Almost all of Kate Quinn's books are set in World War II or One. They're war books and they're very good. The latest audiobook that I got was Go Hunt Me by Kelly DeVos. I have been really keen to read this one, and it's like a reasonably new release in 2022, I believe, and it's a Dracula retelling. I love the cover, and the audiobook narrator sounds like they're doing a really good job actually acting it out. I find it really boring otherwise when they just sort of read it and you haven't got much life to the story, so I'm really hoping that this one lives up to expectations. And I also got A Clash of Kings on Audible, which is obviously book number 2 in A Game of Thrones. I've been meaning to continue reading this series for like a really long time, and I read book 1 and I loved it. It's actually my all-time favorite books. I really love A Game of Thrones. It really just suits me as a fantasy reader, but they are large and we have rather small editions of them, so they're not the most pleasant read in like a physical sense. So I had listened to what the narrator was like on Audible and I really like them, so I'm going to give it a go, and hopefully I'll be able to continue the series and start making some serious progress that way. It's a series that I've also been slightly less motivated to continue just because it's not finished, but I think I want to read what there is of it more so than I do with Patrick Rothfuss and The Name of the Wind, for example, so I'm going to commit to it, and who knows, maybe by the time I actually get to the end, we will have the final book. You never know. There were some other books I've got for free, so I'm just going to quickly whiz through them because these are just ones that I'm planning to read off the Audible library. That's A Kiss from Mr. Fitzgerald by Natasha Lesser, which is historical fiction. Anne of Green Gables by Lucy Montgomery, that's obviously a classic. Wuthering Heights, another classic. What else do I have? I got The Good Girl's Guide to Murder by Holly Jackson. That's just like TikTok famous at the moment and I think is like school crime mystery sort of thing. Frankenstein, I have reread that multiple times. I've never done it on audiobook, but guess what? It's narrated by Dan Stevens, so of course I'm going to give that one a go. And I think those are all the free ones that I haven't talked about previously, and then I have a couple of Kindle books to talk about. that I have got off my uncle's recommendation, who is a big sci-fi reader, and he has recommended a couple of Christopher Nuttall books, who is I think a British sci-fi writer, and I'm quite keen to give it a go because I do like some good sci-fi. So that is The Empire's Cause and Arc Royale, and both are space operas, space saga stories. So I have started Arc Royale. I'm not very far into it though, they're quite large sci-fi, so I will just have to keep you updated as I go through them. But I believe that is all of my digital books that I have to talk about, so let's dive into the enormous pile of physical books. Not really gonna do this in any order, I've just got them in piles around me, so we're just gonna go for it. So the first one I have to talk about is a sequel. At the end of each year I usually go back to a shelf I have on Goodreads which is called Sequels to Buy, and it is where I log the next book in the series I need to get as I read them throughout the year, and then I do like a big fun book haul, which usually I save up for, and that's really fun. This year it wasn't quite the same because I didn't have all of my reading credits in for my book buying regime, which is looking a little unhealthy because of all of this, but we are slowly trying to get that under control. We'll do maybe a little update video about that in particular in the future. So anyway, I just picked a couple of books that I had sort of on my urgent hit list because I wasn't feeling confident that stock would last in the editions I wanted. So that included Crown of Cinders by Emily R. King. This is the sequel to Wings of Fury. It is a Greek mythology retelling, and it's quite feminist in its, I guess, in its angle. I really enjoyed this. I thought it was quite fun and a very easy read. They're quite small and it's a duology, so I'm really looking forward to seeing where the story goes. It was quite a complete story in book one, but it definitely had room to expand the world further and take things to other places, so I'm looking forward to seeing which gods and demigods are going to show up in this one. I then finally got my copy of Cytonic by Brandon Sanderson. This is a sci-fi, it's book 3 in the Skyward series, and I've read it. This was like on my priority reading list, and it was sort of in my, it wasn't actually in my sequels haul because I simply have been waiting about a year for it to come out in the B format because they released them in the tall editions first, and I was just very particular about this series, wanting it in this size. So I literally waited a year, the most self-control I think we've ever seen me exercise, to get this edition, and I loved it. This was 5 stars for me. I just can't get over how good of a job Brandon Sanderson is doing, expanding this series, rotating through loads of different characters and creating a really interesting plot that is just, yeah, really expensive and really engaging. Very hard to put down. Embot is still my favourite character, so I can't wait for book 4. The next one is a Christmas book that I have to show you, which Mum picked for me, and I was very impressed with this selection because it was a rogue selection, not off my wish list, and she got a 10 out of 10 in my opinion for her pick, and that is The Inner Life of Animals by Peter Wolleben. I really should look up how to say his name. He is a German scientist who specialises on forests, I guess, and how they work. He wrote The Hidden Life of Trees, and he's also written The Heartbeat of Trees, which actually I have to show you as well. We'll come back to that because it's at the bottom of another pile. And I was just really taken by his writing. I listened to the audiobook of The Hidden Life of Trees, and it was free on Audible, so I thought, let's just give it a go because it really fitted into all of the non-fiction environmental science I'm reading at the moment. And I loved it. I found it so fascinating. Like, it's changed my perspective on trees. They're so interesting. And why wouldn't you have a career studying them? Anyway, so he's obviously a German speaker. This is translated into English, and this one is focusing on mammals. I believe it'll be related to forests. One would expect so. So I'm really excited to read this, and I'm just really impressed that Mum sort of serendipitously happened to pick one of my favourite environmental non-fiction authors. The next one I have to show you is a special edition, and I think it's Fairyloot. Yes, it is. And that is Poster Girl by Veronica Roth. This one is a different, like a redesigned or recolor schemed cover, and then it has sprayed edges with like a little, I think it's like a drone, and that's like its flight path. Of course, it has some special end papers with diagrams on them, and it is signed by Veronica Roth herself. The naked jacket is pretty much just on the front, has that little motif there, and then, you know, in the foil on the spine as well. This was, I think, October's book, and I confess to not being super thrilled when it turned up. This is probably my least favourite pick that Fairyloot has done so far, only because it's not the fantasy I want. Dystopian does technically fall into a subgenre of fantasy, but I don't know, I had no real desire to collect dystopian books in special editions. I really like the whimsy that you get with fantasy. However, this has grown on me, and I really love that it's a signed edition because it is Veronica Roth at the end of the day, which is very exciting. I think it will be an exceptionally good read. I'm not disappointed in the book. I think she is writing some very interesting dystopian. Once again, thank goodness she's back into it. Veronica Roth wrote the Divergent series, but yeah, I just wasn't so fussed about having a special edition of it, but I am looking forward to reading it. So that was that one. I then have a very special book which I'm so excited to read and hoping to find time in the near future. My dad actually got this for me because he was over in the UK at the time of its release, and that is Madly Deeply, which is Alan Rickman's diaries with the foreword by Emma Thompson. This is obviously available in most places selling books. It's just that sometimes Waterstones, even after conversion, is cheaper than buying hardbacks in Australia, which is absolutely crazy, but that's just life. So Dad very kindly brought this one back from the UK. Do I need to say more? Like, if you love Alan Rickman, I'm sure you're very aware of this. If you don't care about it, then you probably don't care to hear more, but I'm really looking forward to diving into it. I'm ready to feel the feels. The next book is a highlight from Christmas, and it is a book that Chris got me, and it's one of the special editions of Fairy Tale by Stephen King. What is special is that this is done on a purple wash. It is usually done in a blue wash. So it looks really stunning, and I'm quite taken by the colours. Chris listened to the audiobook of this and absolutely adored it, so I have promised him that this is going to be literally one of the next things I pick up. I may or may not be in the middle of 7 books. We have turned into chaos mode, which is partially thanks to the holiday and leaving half-finished books and starting new ones whilst I'm away. But when I get back on top of that, I'm hoping that this will literally be the next thing I pick up. It is fantasy and it is Stephen King, and I think there are other dimensions, but other than that I don't really want to know much more going into this, but I know that loads and loads of people have loved it, so I've got really high expectations. The next book I have is another Fairyloot special edition, which is A Dowry of Blood by S.T. Gibson. I've heard quite a number of good things, and I'm really excited to have a special edition of this. I think the regular editions just look really insignificant. It's quite a slim book, so the hardback beefs it out of it, and the edges are this really cool sort of gothic wallpaper vibes, which I'm loving. The end papers are some artwork, and it's actually really beautiful without the jacket on. It is you can't really see that too well, but it's got a printed design the whole way around. This one is not a signed edition, I don't believe, but I am quite excited to read it. It has some really cool drop caps in that sort of old type face thing. And from memory, I think this is sort of vampires and maybe Dracula vibes. Oh yes, no, it's literally Dracula is involved in this story. So I think this is going to be a spectacularly good read. And yeah, as I said, really much prefer this special edition to the regular ones. So that's a big win. The next one's another highlight from my Christmas haul, and that's the Penelopiad by Margaret Atwood. This is a retelling from Penelope's perspective of the Odyssey, so Odysseus being her husband. This has always been one of my favourite Greek myths, so the fact that Margaret Atwood did a retelling, a feminist retelling of it, just had me 10 levels of excited. This was actually the 100th book I read at the end of last year. I don't think we've even had a chance to check in and say that I read that, so if you're still watching at this point, then we can celebrate and say, yes, I did hit 100 books, and I will probably be talking about that at some other point. But this was brilliant, 5 stars, very small, easy read, but was just everything you could possibly hope for when it comes to feminism and Margaret Atwood in Greek myth. The next book was the second sequel that I got at my end of year haul. I think I only got 3, and that is Find Me Their Bones by Sarah Wolf. This one is the book 2 to Bring Me Their Hearts. The names are all so similar, I get very confused. Again, I was just, I'm particularly after this cover for this one in this height. It's quite a specific height, so I would be devastated if I couldn't get it. So I put this on the priority list. Apart from anything, I'm so keen to read it because these books are fabulous. This is sort of a paranormal fantasy world. It involves witches and it involves people that are called the Heartless, and their hearts have been removed from their bodies and are under the care of the witches, which makes them their servants. And so they are forced to do the witch's bidding. Yeah, I mean, like, that sets you up for such a great premise of like love-hate relationships and difficult things, and I want to love you but I also have to kill you, and it's so fun. If you haven't read this series, like, please go and start it because it is so good and it will not let you down. The next book is a Lumicrate special edition. I believe this was their December book, and it is The Red Scholar's Wake by Aliette de Bodard, and I am like 10 levels of excited about this as well. I was stoked to open this because I hadn't realised that Aliette had done another book. She wrote something called Tiger Dagger, which was a novella that I read, and I was like, this was so good and I need more books. I don't read novellas very often, and I actually bought that technically by accident thinking it was a full book, but I was thinking to myself that I must put her on my radar to watch out for anything else she writes because it's going to be good. And it just has like a lovely gradiated colour scheme on the edges there. The end papers have this gorgeous design, and it's got this beautiful foiling on the front there with the, you know, the spine done. This also came with a book plate, so this is a sticker that has been signed by her, which you get to stick in the book, and I'm very excited to read it. She writes a lot of Thai inspired like sci-fi fantasy, and it's often queer. I think that all of that applies to this book, so I am pretty much like expecting that this will be a guaranteed great read. She's definitely going to be an up-and-coming name, in my opinion, in the sci-fi realm for YA. I just think it's going to happen. She is just like fits the bill perfectly for that really niche and small gap in YA sci-fi that is actually very, very good and not too cliched either way. The next one's another Fairyloot special edition. I think this was December's for them, and it is Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies. It is beautiful, different colour scheme going on. It has the purple and all the mushrooms on the edges. It has some beautiful artwork on the end papers, and it is fully printed on the front and back without the jacket on. I'd seen this one floating around, and I was actually quite excited that I've got a copy of this now, particularly as this is of course signed as well. I don't know much about it other than I'm expecting cozy fantasy vibes from it. I haven't really heard too much about it either, but I've also not really been much online, I confess, whilst I haven't been filming, so I am pretty happy to go into this one blind. I immediately think of Spiderwick, so I'm kind of hoping that it's like an adult version of Spiderwick, basically. Then we have another Fairyloot special edition. I don't believe I've shown this one to you guys, and it is Spells for Forgetting by Adrienne Young. Adrienne Young has written Fable, which you may recognize her from, and this was, I think this was like witches and magic and spells. It has some beautiful end paper artwork, and it is actually gorgeous without the jacket on. It's this green like case, and then this beautiful scene like done in foil on the front, and it is signed with a book plate, da-da-da, right at the front there, or at least that's where I've put mine. So I hope that this is really good. I haven't read anything by her before, so I'm not sure what to expect. And I don't know if I showed you the edges, but it's got sort of, they kind of look like fireworks. I'm not sure if they're meant to be spells. That would probably make more sense, but I hope I really like this, because this will be my first time trying out her writing. The next one is super special and something I was so excited to receive, or to buy, and that is a signed edition of David Attenborough's The Trials of Life. I recently read book one in this little trilogy, which was Living Planet. So this came from Waterstones, and I was onto it straight away. You can see that his signature is, if it focuses, you see his signature is just there on the end papers. I love David Attenborough, and you know that, and these books are so good. These are actually older books done by him, and they have been going through in recent years and updating them, and also giving them new jackets and re-releasing them. So I've now been on the hunt for book 3. Actually, I think Living Planet might be book 2, and I'm looking for book 1, and this is 3, something like that. But I couldn't be more stoked that I have a signed David Attenborough like book in my hands. I think that that is something that is really quite special. Speaking of special signed editions, I also got a signed copy of Mallory Blackman's Just Saying. Mallory Blackman's a very influential black author who wrote books like Noughts and Crosses, which I think you either are or aren't familiar with depending on what you've researched or had to read for school. I haven't read any of her stuff, but I'm very aware of who she is. So when Waterstones said that they had some signed editions in stock, I thought that that would be something quite wonderful to have. I'm really, really interested in learning more about her writing and her life in this memoir, because she has had such a profound impact on the writing community and just on, like, in black voices in general. So I think that this is really cool. Plus it has a gorgeous hot pink spine. The next book is one that came in the December novelist box, and that is Nettle and Bone by T. Kingfisher. This is a hardback edition. There's nothing special about it. It's just a curated box of 4 books. They did send out a 5th book as a bonus in December as an apology because it didn't come until the very beginning of February, which was really quite delayed. The opening lines for the blurb says, "This isn't a fairy tale where the princess marries a prince. It's the one where she kills him." So, I mean, that's like exactly the kind of vibes we want in fantasy. No one can deny that. The next one is another book from that novelist box, and it is Ocean's Echo by Everina Maxwell. This, I'm honestly confused as to when I'm supposed to read it. It is listed on Goodreads as book number 2 in Winter's Orbit, but as sort of a standalone but related book. I happen to own Winter's Orbit, so I think I will read them like Winter's Orbit first and then this. Presumably it can be read as a standalone, otherwise why would you put it in a subscription box? This one is a YA sci-fi that I've heard like really good things about, as it just being very engaging and quite great. We've got a socialite, a soldier, and an unwilling bond. You've got to love unwilling bonds when you come to like adventures in sci-fi and fantasy. I always feel like they make for really great and intriguing plots. I don't want to read too much on the blurb on that one, just in case it's better to go in blind, having read like Winter's Orbit first. The next one is one of the sneaky review copies that I mentioned has landed on my doorstep, and that is Well, That Was Unexpected by Jessie Sutanto. Now this is the author of A for Aunties, which I loved, and this actually came out in 2022. I think this was sent to me less perhaps so for reading and reviewing this one and for inviting me to review some of her upcoming titles. I'm not entirely sure why I got this one. I didn't ask for it, but I really like this author, so that's really nice of Harlequin to send it my way. The imprint is Electric Monkey, or HarperCollins, sorry, not Harlequin. Yeah, I mean, I assume it will be sort of a fun rom-com time. The title certainly gives those vibes, so this is out now. So if you've read this one, do let me know what you think and if it compares to Dial A for Aunties. That's what the other one's called, because yeah, I'm keen to read it. I think it will be a nice sort of palette cleanser between perhaps some heavier books. Now the next book I got a double up of between Novelist and I think it was Illumicrate, and that is The Whispering Dark. So I have the standard paperback, which I think I'll probably read from. I generally try to avoid double ups, and I will just read from my special editions, because why else am I buying them? But when I do get a double up, then I'll probably, for the sake of not damaging the book, in case I don't like it and want to sell it on, we'll read from the paperback. So this is just a regular paperback for The Whispering Dark. And then the special edition has these really pretty done edges here with like the flowers, and the end papers have a lovely sort of pink pattern design, and there is the foil embossing on the front. Oh yes, and this one has reversible artwork on the jacket as well, which I almost never use because it seems sacrilegious to unbend and refold dust jackets. And it is signed. Now this particular book follows a deaf character, which I always find really intriguing, and I haven't read much about. Like, I haven't read many books, even though I have a few where the main character is deaf, and I believe that there is perhaps some dark magic involved, or I think there's parallel worlds. And that has been really quite interesting. There's people turning up dead, there's all sorts going on. It's certainly on the darker fantasy vibe. And I'm very curious to, yeah, dive into it. Again, I haven't heard too much about this one, but I'm really hoping for good things. I think the cover's very cute. They made the flower petals into skulls, but I think they ended up looking ever so slightly comical, which makes me kind of giggle every time I see the cover. Right, this next book is a little bit special and something I was really excited to receive. Again, came in a novelist box, and that is Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldry, and it is a signed edition. It came with a book plate, which is very exciting, so I've got it put there on the half title page. Look, I'm sure I don't really need to introduce this one. This is like a self-published, which then got published because it got so popular on TikTok sort of book. It's cozy fantasy, and if you've seen the alternate cover for it, it's sort of like troll looking people running a bookshop, a cafe even. Once they're done sort of slaying monsters, they're retiring to become baristas, and I just think that that's hilarious, and I'm very much so looking forward to reading this and hopefully having a good laugh, because I have heard people from all different walks of the fantasy reading world who all agree that this is actually really good. The next book also came in Novelist, and that is City of Nightmares by Rebecca Schaefer. I know nothing about this book. I've seen it floating around. I quite like the cover, and it says face your fear or become your nightmare, and I think on that premise alone I'm really keen. It's given me like Divergent Dauntless vibes. Again, not seen this one much around, but I've not been much around, so that's not really saying very much, is it? Oh yes, and this has the most excellent first line to its blurb. Ever since her sister became a man-eating spider. And then it continues, and honestly, do we need to know more than that? Now, the next book is a sequel. It's a special order that I did with Fairyloot, and it's for the Atlas Paradox, which is the sequel to the Atlas 6. I'm currently reading the Atlas 6 at the moment with Chris still as a buddy read, We've been reading since somewhere in December, I believe, and we're not loving it. We have to say that we're finding it really dragging its feet and a little bit boring. So I'm very on the fence about whether I'm going to continue. It has crossed my mind that I'm quite tempted to perhaps sell these on and give them to someone else who might want to read them. I was convinced that I wanted to buy more of the special editions of Oliver Blake's books, but I decided not to. I just found Atlas 6, yeah, to be really slow and non-eventful. But in any case, this is what the end papers are looking like, and then it just has the sort of cover design embossed there in foiling. I think this is signed as well. Yes, this is a signed edition. So yeah, unsure how to feel about this one because I really wanted to like these. It's a really interesting sort of low fantasy story where there's a bunch of people who can do different types of magic brought together into the Library of Alexandria. But it's, I don't know, there's just other stuff going on. I don't want to say too much. Some people really like this, but this is not really my vibe. Moving on to some other Fairyloot books, or another one in any case, is The Last Tale of the Flower Bride by Roshani Chokshi. I didn't actually realise that Roshani Chokshi was coming out with a new book, so this was a surprise to me when I opened up the subscription. I think this is one of their latest editions, and it has this beautiful little like pattern face with the flowers in front of it going down. It is a bookplate signed edition, and the end papers are quite nice. They look like this, and it's got a lovely foil design on the case as well. There's so much going on with these books. This one's also printed on all three sides going around. I think this is a really, really beautiful edition. Certainly one of the prettiest ones I think they've done that I own in any case. And I'm really excited to read it because I have read The Gilded Wolves by Roshani Chokshi and I was really, really impressed by her writing. I think she does a fabulous job. This one is sort of going with some fairy tale vibes, and there's a scholar of myths, and there's someone who's an heiress to a fortune. It sounds really interesting. It just sounds like there's a lot of like deceit and secrets going on. It also sounds like it might be a Beauty and the Beast retelling. In fact, it sounds very Beauty and the Beast-esque. The final line says, combining the lush, haunting atmosphere of Mexican Gothic with the dreamy enchantment of the invisible life of Addie LaRue. That sounds excellent. One of the last Illumicrate books that I have received is Godkiller by Hannah Kana, which is really exciting. I've been really keen to read this book, and it's got, again, some really, really pretty sprayed edges. Just sort of continuing like the vibe of the front cover. It's got something I've never seen before, which is foiling on the end papers. So those are actually shiny, and it's obviously also signed there as well. And then it is printed the whole way round. On just the back case as well, which is really quite stunning. This made it very hard to give up Illumicrate when I saw how lovely this edition was. I do love their books, but you know, gotta pay those bills and you can't always buy books. So I am really looking forward to reading this one. I do actually have another copy of this on its way. I was so excited for this that I had it pre-ordered with Waterstones, so I should have another really lovely edition to share with you, hopefully in the coming weeks. This one is about people who are god killers. I don't think I need to explain more. I feel like that's just the vibe of the book and all you need to know. Right, the next one's another really special signed edition, and that is Hugh Bonneville's Memoir, which is playing under the piano. I love Hugh Bonneville, like Downton Abbey, Notting Hill. He's just one of my favourite actors, and I was so excited to get my hands on a copy of a signed edition by him. So this is just clearly becoming a small addiction of mine, collecting these special editions. It is just red underneath, and yeah, look, I love him. I can't wait to read his memoirs. He's done so many fascinating pieces of filmography, so I think it's going to be fabulous, and I think it's really cute because Gary Oldman has given his little endorsement thing on the back, and Gary Oldman is Sirius Black from Harry Potter, so you know, that's really cool. I then have a very special special order from Fairyloot, which is the duology of Daughter of the Pirate King. I've been waiting for these for ages, so I've got both books, and when you put them together, the sprayed edges make a pirate ship, which is so cool. So I am currently trying to work out where I'm going to display these so that I can show that off. It's super awesome. Both of them have similarly, well, the same styled artwork at the front, and then they have different motifs. I think the other one is an anchor on the case, and they are of course both signed. So there is a signature. She has a really cool signature. I've obviously read these books, and yeah, I think I ordered these like at least 8 months ago. It's just such a long lead up time for some of their books, so it was really exciting to see these in the flesh, and they are every bit as beautiful as I had hoped they would be. The next special edition I have to show you is A Fire Endless by Rebecca Ross. This one is very similarly done because it is a matching one to A River Enchanted. This is an Illumicrate edition. It's the only special thing I've ever bought from them outside the subscription, which is one of the reasons why I chose to pick Fairyloot over Illumicrate, if you're wondering. It has some really, really beautiful artwork on the end papers, and the case is pink with some blue foiling underneath. It is just a really lovely edition, and I love seeing the two of them together on my bookshelf. And this is a signed edition as well, so I'm really chuffed about this one, and I have them in my bedroom rather than in this room here, so that I can gaze upon them every morning when I wake up. Another Fairyloot edition that I've got, which is a sequel to another one that they have done, is Heart of the Sun Moria by Sulin Tan. I loved Daughter of the Moon Goddess. I do not own the Fairyloot special edition. I wasn't subscribed to them at the time when they did it, and it is just way too expensive to buy secondhand because people are selling it for more. The value's increased, but I have this one, so I am facing book 1 spine out so I can see what it is, and then book 2 facing with the spreaders out. So this is beautiful yellow. I know that book 1 has like a purple color scheme going on. It still has some gorgeous artwork on the front. It is really pale with that foil design on the case, and it's signed, so that is really special. I really do have quite a lot of special editions that have come in since we last spoke. The next book is sort of a little special purchase I did for myself around Christmas. I have a habit of going to one of my favourite independent bookstores and picking out something that's a little bit special, and that was this beautiful Harper Muse edition of Jane Eyre. It comes with this little protective sleeve on the front, and then it's actually like a padded 3D design. So there is a texture to the front of this. It's really big and it comes with gilded edges. That is the main thing that's special about them, and they do have some like colour throughout, like the chapter titles, page numbers and whatnot, they're all in green. So it is a really, really beautiful edition that I am just absolutely in love with. Jane Eyre is one of my favourite classics, and also one of the first classics I ever read. So I have this at Pride of Place on my bookshelf. They do these editions for a number of the other classics as well, but at the moment this is the only one I'm planning on getting. I don't really want to start a full new collection, but they are lovely. Some more special editions. It is honestly outrageous at this point. I have Babel by R.F. Kuang to show you. This is an Illumicrate special, no sorry, it's a Fairyloot special edition, though both of them did it. I have read this and it comes with really, really detailed, lovely sprayed edges. I think that this is a really great book for what the author is trying to do. I don't really consider it a fantasy book, however. It has the design printed all the way around. This has been branded as a fantasy dark academia, but it's a slow burn social commentary book with a touch of magic is how I would describe it. So I was disappointed by this because I had very wrong expectations because of the way particularly the subscription boxes are advertising and promoting them. But this is so much more than a fantasy book. It has some very profound things to say about race, and in the really cool setting of Oxford University. But yeah, so honestly, many thoughts about this book. My review is up on Goodreads if you're interested to read it. Now, I then have the first book from the Locked Library subscription to show you. So I actually got this today just before, as I was setting up to film. So this is a new subscription that is started by HarperCollins. It's based in England, so it will be sold in, out of the UK. And I have a 3-month subscription at the moment just to see what they were like. Their draw card is basically that they can assure you that you won't get double ups on their special editions because they are the publisher, so they obviously control the rights, which is one of the most annoying things probably when you have multiple subscriptions, is the double ups. So as far as I know, that stands true. They have a lovely pink box, and the book was The Thorns Remain, and it looks like this, and it's by JJ. Ooh, are those initials or a name? There's no dots. I'm not sure how to say that then, but Harwood. And it has beautiful sprayed edges. I was really, really impressed with the quality of this. The end papers are similarly that floral design, and then it's red with a lovely foil design, and it has like the really cool branding here. I'm very curious to know if all the books are going to come with this key motif, or whether that's relevant to this specific book. I'm not sure. I don't know if this will change, but at least this book for February comes with a author note printed in it with the signature, so that's really quite cool. I haven't heard of this book before. It's about fae and fairies. It's a fae lord and a mortal woman. I guess it's Romeo and Juliet sort of style, but yeah, it's absolutely gorgeous. I was really impressed by this and glad that I tried it out. Moving on to the final sequel that I bought at the end of the year is Sea Sparrow by Kristin Cashore. I am obsessed with this particular edition, and this is probably the least popular edition going out and around. There's some really gorgeous plainer ones, but I really like almost the psychedelic colours of this one. Well, it's not psychedelic, but it's chaotic for sure. So I have Winterkeep in this edition, and now Sea Sparrow, which is like the revamping continuation of the series by Kristin Cashore. You can't get the first three. It has like matching covers here. They're a little bit different though, and you can't get them in hardback for love nor money, so I've made peace with it and I'm simply going to continue here on in getting these ones. These are reasonably expensive to get just because of pricing of books in Australia, but I thought they would be worth it, and I love this series. It is the Graceling Realm series, so Graceling, Fire and Bitterblue are the first three. They're a real like staple fantasy book in the YA community, and I loved it. I love reading them when I was at school, so I'm really excited to keep reading with Winterkeep and Sea Sparrow. It's sort of like fantasy magic but assassins. Now I've next got a little pile of some books I got in New Zealand whilst I was away. Obviously I did a bit of book shopping because you've got to try out the local bookstores. So the first book I got is When Women Were Dragons by Kelly Barnhill. This is literally about a time when a bunch of women simply take flight as dragons. It's set in Wisconsin in 1955. It is a feminist piece of fiction. Reagan at Peruse Project speaks really highly of this, and I had had my eye on it since I saw it come out. I think it was last year, but I hadn't actually seen it in any bookstores until I went into one in Rotorua in New Zealand, and I obviously just had to get it. The next one was one that I got in this beautiful bookshop in Mount Eden, which is like in Auckland area in New Zealand, and it was called The Last Chapter, or Chapters. I really should be able to remember that. And it was a romance only bookshop, so I picked up a copy of the Bromance Book Club. I bloody loved this. I read this whilst I was away. It was hilarious. It's all about a marriage falling apart. The husband is like the main character, and the way that he tries to fix it is he joins a book club with his fellow like sporting mates where they read like bodice ripper romances to try and glean advice from the female authors writing them of what women actually want. It's so funny. It is a delightful read. It's a 5-book series. I have not been able to find a copy of this for love nor money in any bookstore other than that one, so I was like stoked. As soon as I saw it, I knew I had to get it. So yeah, I read it, 5 out of 5 stars. Can't wait to continue reading it. I got the next one from Unity Books, which is sort of a chain bookstore, and I found this particular one in the Wellington branch. It is an environmental non-fiction, and it's called Tickets for the Ark. I thought this sounded really, really interesting and was very timely, as I bought it on the same day that I went to Zealandia, which is a conservation area, and it is all about how we choose where to focus money and conservation efforts when so many things / everything in the world need help. So I thought that that sounded really interesting, and I wanted to know more about how that does work and what the theories are, so I'm really looking forward to finding out more about this. The next one was Daughter of Sparta by Claire Andrews. I've seen this one around. It's just sort of been generally on my radar, but I haven't physically seen it around, so again I found this one in Rotorua and I picked it up. Sparta, women, that's all we need to know. This next one I found again in Wellington in a really great secondhand bookstore called RTB's, and it had an amazing selection of books, and that is The Queen of Blood by Sarah Beth Durst. I had my eye on this back when it came out, which was a number of years ago in 2016, and I didn't get it at that time because I wasn't sure whether it was like good or just not going to land very well, but it seems to have got increasingly popular, and I now was really struggling to find even just a paperback at an affordable price because it's not everywhere in Australia. So when I saw there was a secondhand copy of like the first edition of it in this tall C format, I knew I had to pick it up. This one starts with everything has a spirit, the willow tree with leaves that kiss the pond, the stream that feeds the river, and the winds that exhales fresh snow. But the spirits that reside within the land want to rid it of all humans. Lonely Reader on Instagram has said many, many good things about this, and I really trust his opinion, so I am hoping that I will love this too. The next one is actually by a New Zealand author, and again a great find from, I think it was called McLeod's bookstore in Rotorua, and it's Tarquin the Honest. By Gareth Ward. This sounds so funny, so I'm actually going to read you the blurb. It says, Tarquin the Honest, wizard of the Silver Weasel, is a liar, a coward, a charlatan, and a cheat. And, according to his diminutive roguish sidekick Luna Nyx, those are his most endearing qualities. On a perilous quest to serve the Golden Gauntlet for a mysterious patron, Tarquin and his band of unlikely warriors must navigate the terrors of Sorrowwood, battle zombies, giants, zombie giants, and an entire evil order of necromancers. Despite never living up to the expectations of his hero father, somehow Tarquin, through his multitude of dubious skills and deluded perceptions of his own greatness, must defy death to overcome a series of complex challenges. Will Tarquin betray his friends to save his own skin, or will he roll the dice and risk everything? Only the goddess Fortuna knows, and she's not telling. I just think that this sounds funny. This came with like a staff recommendation at McLeod's, and they made it sound hilarious, so I couldn't pass that one up. And the last thing that I got in New Zealand was this really beautiful and very special first edition of the House of Strife, and that's by Maurice Shadbolt. Now this is book 3 in the New Zealand Wars books that can all be read individually. It's a signed first edition, which is super special. So you can see it is signed just here. And I was so excited to find it. I went to New Zealand specifically having read the Lonely Planet recommendations, and they recommended reading this because it gives some of the context with the New Zealand wars that happened, which was between colonisers and the Maori people, and I thought that this one sounded good. It was specifically recommended, so I was looking in every bookstore to try and find it, and I found it at RTB's in this first signed edition, so this is very precious to me now. Alright, we are getting there. We're on to the last little pile of books. So, another little special edition, this time from Waterstones, is Hellbent by Leigh Bardugo. We have been waiting so long for the sequel. I've still not read Ninth House, but I was determined to get this one because it matches the original special edition by Waterstones, which my dad just happened to get me on one of the trips back to England that he did when it first came out. This one also comes with sprayed edges, and yes, I agree that this is honestly quite a horrible cover. I'm so curious to read it and find out more. But what I really wanted from this is it has the matching snakeskin foiling, so Ninth House has the same but in silver. And I just thought it was really cool and I really wanted it, so I'm really excited to read this. I hope it's good. It's Leigh Bardugo. I'm pretty much expecting that it's going to be something I enjoy. I know that it's sort of dark magic in a university setting. I've never fully understood what exactly the plot is going to be about, but fingers crossed I like it because now I've got book 2. The next book is a book that Chris got me for Valentine's Day because he knows the way to my heart is not through flowers or chocolate but books, and it is a faux love story, which sounds hilarious because it sounds like it is Romeo and Juliet but in a Thai noodle shop. I don't think we need to know more than that. I've seen this around and I've seen some good reviews, and I'm definitely in the mood for some good, funny YA romances. I'm still trying to recover from how much I didn't like Second First Impressions, so the Bromance Book Club and books like this I think are going to set me back on the right path. The next book is that other review copy that snuck through, and that is Jackie French's Becoming Miss Mulberry. This is absolutely gorgeous. I believe it's historical fiction, or if it's not, it's just general fiction. And I'm sure it will be good. I'm not sure if I'm going to get around to reading this one. I just don't really have time for review copies. I do like Jackie French though. I have read one of her books before and really enjoyed it, but thank you anyway to Harlequin for sending me a copy of it. That's very nice of them to do, and I'm sure Mum will enjoy reading it even if I don't get around to it. Okay, speaking of Peter Vollenben, as I did at the very beginning of this video, I have The Heartbeat of Trees, which is his new book. I've actually been trying to grab a copy of this for probably about a year at this point. I think it came out 2021 they did the English edition, and I apparently need to get a new bookmark. I'm literally using like my sunglasses like fabric case to hold my place right now. I started reading it whilst I was away, but this is just like a follow-up / more information about forests and how they work. I've read like 15 pages so far of it and I've already found it absolutely fascinating. But yeah, I haven't really seen this in bookstores, which has just been really frustrating, but now I finally have a copy. The next book is the sequel to Jurassic Park, which is The Lost World. You can see that I'm over halfway through this. I had to look so hard to find this, which I found really surprising. It was interestingly difficult to find Michael Crichton's books in any bookstore, whether it was first-hand or second-hand. There were almost none of his books first-hand in any of the stores, and when it came to second-hand stores, there was only ever like a couple, and never Jurassic Park. In the end, I managed to find the sequel in a bargain bucket in Whitcoulls, which is one of the main bookstore chains in New Zealand, and I'm so happy that I did. I really loved Jurassic Park and I was so keen to read the sequel. It is a duology. There is no English version of the audiobook that exists at the moment, so I couldn't continue with audio. But yeah, I've slowly been making my way through this and it is just as delightful and chompy as the first one. And the last book I have to show you is Spice Road by Maya Ibrahim, and this one was the other book that Chris gave me for Valentine's Day. I've again started this one. I've read like half a chapter, and it involves magic and tea ceremonies, so magic that comes from the tea ceremony, and I love tea, so I thought that Chris did an excellent job picking this one up and saying that he thought that this sounded very much so like my thing. I'm very keen to get further into it. It already seems like it's got like a really great writing style going on, and I really enjoyed the whole 9 pages that I've read at this stage. But I think it's going to be a really fun adventure, and I love the cover, and I've heard lots of good things from a few friends who have already read it, so those are all ticks. That was a mammoth task, but we are finally up to date with all of the books from this year and a few of the highlights from the last few months of last year, since basically September. Let me know in the comments if you've read any of these. I'll be so interested to hear your thoughts. I apologise that I've not been able to go through every book that I have hauled. It's just too many books, but here's to hoping that I will be able to continue making videos in a more regular pattern now that I am happy and healthy again and back home. So thanks for tuning in, and I will be back with more information about how my book buying ban is going, how I am tracking my reading for this year and some of my goals, and some other thoughts on a few specific books that I've been reading. So I will see you in my next video. Goodbye.